Now, I don't know if in your lifetime you've ever had to adhere to a dress code, because obviously we have dress codes or we have like socially acceptable things to wear to certain events or places, which I've never been good at doing. But I will tell you, if you think that any dress code you have ever had to adhere to was strict, you're going to have to think again, because the colonial lawmakers of this time, they would like a word with you. I promise you, you're not doing it right. If you take it back, and I'm talking early colonial America, this is before, during, and a little bit after the war. In many colonies, what you wore was not necessarily just a personal choice, it was actually a very direct and legal declaration of your place in society, and a lot of times your financial standing. Laws spelled it out perfectly with breathtaking confidence. One of the rules, no lace for anyone below the rank of gentleman, which I don't know how you get promoted to that position, but if you weren't there, no wearing lace for you. And there was no silk unless your estate could justify it. And again, I'm not exactly entirely certain about the numbers and the level of education that you have before you get to be called a gentleman, but that was the law, you guys. You had to be a gentleman or you were not wearing any lace or silk. You also were not allowed to wear any flashy colors. You were not allowed to use any gold thread, any decorative buttons, nothing fancy if your income did not quote unquote deserve them. So in Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Virginia, these particular sumptuary laws read less like fashion advice and more like social fencing. Clothing was meant to signal rank instantly. You didn't need introductions. You could see who mattered, who you were supposed to associate with, who you were supposed to talk with. And if you dressed above your station, that was not actually considered ambition or being a dapper fella. That was a direct threat. These laws were not about taste or personal expression, little touch of the fashion bug. It had nothing to do with that. This was very much about control, because colonial society was so fragile. The new world was kind of scrambling around for old hierarchies. They wanted a little bit of stability in this new world. Land was cheaper, trades were profitable. Former nobodies could suddenly afford nice things. That terrified elites. They very much believed that order depended on visible difference. And if a blacksmith could dress like a merchant and a merchant like a gentleman, then how did anyone know who was supposed to lead, who they were supposed to obey or defer to? I mean, they needed some kind of stability in this very new and unstable world that they were creating, making it up as they went along. So this was kind of like a desperate attempt for having 2 feet on the ground and knowing what to do with yourself, because they didn't. They were, like I said, they were making this up. Sumptuary laws were really trying to freeze society in its place. They also wrapped themselves in moral language. Excess was sinful, modesty was virtue. Spending too much on clothes supposedly led to vanity, laziness, and the direct collapse of proper behavior. Now, I do want to point out that it is a little bit funny how morality always lined up very neatly with protecting the very powerful. Enforcement was very selectively applied, because in practice, these laws were enforced very unevenly. The wealthy often ignored them, the ambitious skirted them, and the poor were the ones who bore the brunt. Records show fines issued for lace cuffs, decorative hats, and even boots that were deemed too fashionable for their owner's income. I'm not kidding you, this is for real. Clothing actually became evidence in court, and your outfit could even be used against you. What you wore could signal rebellion without a single word spoken, which actually brings us to the next problem that lawmakers obsessed over. And if they cared so much about what you wore, I want you to just think for a second and imagine what they were going to say and what they thought about what came out of your mouth. I mean, the things that you said were decently monitored, and it was a little bit excessive, because now we're going to move from hymns and cuffs to tongues and thoughts, which sounds a little weird now that I've said it out loud, but that's what we're doing, because these colonial lawmakers were far more afraid of words than they even were wardrobes. So in places was like the Massachusetts Bay Colony. Speech was not just expressive, it was very regulated. Cursing could obviously earn you a fine, which I don't think is outrageously crazy to think about, but repeated offenses meant public punishment. Not kidding, public punishment. Blasphemy, which is speaking lightly of God, questioning scripture, or even invoking the divine too casually could land you in some very serious legal trouble. And in extreme cases, I'm not kidding you, it carried the threat of corporal punishment or exile. Even idle gossip was a little bit suspicious. Talking too much, spreading rumors, or speaking ill of your neighbor was seen as corrosive. It wasn't just annoying, it was very, very dangerous. Communities were small, they were tightly wound, and they very much depended on trust. So loose tongues could easily unravel social order faster than even theft or violence. So the lawmakers decided that they were going to step in, and words were treated very much like sparks of fire in a very dry forest.